This podcast should not be listened to whilst driving or operating heavy machinery. This is Living Lightly with Jenny Light. Yogic philosophy, guided meditations, and pranayamas. Please subscribe for all future podcasts. Welcome to today's session. Enjoy.
So we're here on the University of Life, and this plane of being is very cloying. It has a vested interest in playing out duality. There's all that is out there, and then there's me as seemingly separate. But there's also a duality that goes on within, which is one of fear or wholesomeness, the soul journey. So you've got this constant play. And as you go on in your spiritual journey, there is a suggestion of going 3 steps forward and then you go 2 steps back, because there's always an equal and opposite test that arises with each step forward, each tiny step. Did you learn this? Were you really ready to let go of that fear, whatever one you were facing at the time? Were you really ready to let it go? So the universe then presents you from the lightness of your spiritual progress. It presents you with a sense of heaviness, something that's arising within. And the way to deal with all of those is to just allow them to percolate up and out and let them go. It's the same for everything, no matter how hard, no matter what the particular story is that comes up. Because you are not that heaviness and you're not that issue you only believed yourself to be at one time. And that is what you're facing on your spiritual journey each and every day. So realise that this is just a process. So sit back and trust the journey, because it is just a process. You have come into this incarnation and you've come with certain spiritual longings and awarenesses, and you're ready to go deeper. You're ready to take that into a much more elevated level. Just trusting that, going with that process on a day-to-day level as little things arise. Tiny little irritations bubble to the surface. You say, well, that isn't me, and let it bubble away. If you don't give it attention, or you don't hold that as it arises, it merely flows away. It ceases to be something that you've conquered it. If you don't pay attention, you've conquered it. So when we say on the battlefield of life, we're not always talking about picking up a sword. It's not necessarily that. But it can be in minor triumphs over tiny irritations within, because each one then builds and gives you the strength to overcome even great trials of periods when things go off kilter, especially when there's family events that are difficult. Then you can still remain centred and calm, and part of your awareness is going to be on the external, but the other part of your awareness is ever secure with the inner eyes focused upwards. So you're in that beam of consciousness even in the midst of difficult trials, that your consciousness is unaltered. They say that the Buddha had one eye looking out onto the world and the other one was constantly within, unshakable within. And what we learn to do in the spiritual journey is to withdraw the awareness within, take the focus of the 2 eyes and make them a single pointed focus within. So for this, the breath needs to be calm, the body needs to be calm, and the eyes need to be calm. So learning to school the eyes so that they don't flicker around behind the eyelids, because each one of those little flickers is your attention being drawn to something that the ego is bubbling up, something it's presenting you with as a toy for you to play with, which takes you away from your inner focus. That could be a pleasant toy, or it could be an unpleasant toy, but they're all just something bubbling up from the ego within. So just allowing them to bubble past and maintain your inner focus. So what we're working on doing today is stilling the breath, stilling the body, and then focusing on the eyes. So for the purpose of today, we're focusing the eyes on the brow, and then we're going to be focusing on the crown. So that's that upward journey into infinity. It's that elevation through the spine. We're learning that we can travel upwards and within into that expanded infinity, and all you're losing is that which is not you. So when you're born, you come into this confining envelope of a body, and you forget that you were unlimited spirit before that. You forget through the period of gestation in the womb, being confined, being a state of a helpless baby, unable to move the body in the way that you could have done when you didn't have a physical body. You forget. We forget that we were unlimited before and we now have a body limitation. We become ego identified with this as the sum and total of all there is. And a bit like a bird in a gilded cage, when the doors open, the bird will still, because of habit of being in a cage, it'll be afraid to take to the open skies. You know, even a gilded cage is still a cage. And we're afraid to take to the open skies, and that's us. The doorway is always open, but we are afraid to take to the open skies. We're afraid to expand into infinity. So we'll start today by interiorizing, to draw the attention in towards the breath, to be coming into the present moment, to be aware that the body does breathe and that it has a soft presence. So even as the rest of the body may be dense, the breath has a soft presence. And tuning into that softness. That softness that fills the body and then flows away, like the softness of a gentle breeze or the softness of a seed borne on the wind, gossamer light, or the softness of petals as they fall from a rose, or the softness of starlight. That the breath has presence. It brings us into the here and now. So the breath arises in the body and the breath falls away, gossamer light and leaving a presence of softness. Softening up density, bringing a sense of lightness. Being observing of the length of the breath, and choosing to lengthen the inhale and soften the exhale, even to the last puff of air. Lengthening the inhale and focusing on the long, soft exhalation. And realizing that there is a movement in the breath. And this movement comes into peaceful stillness, either before the breath begins or before the breath exhales. And tuning into these moments of pause where you can be buoyant. You can hold the softness as if you are being upheld like the tiniest seed on the wind. You are being held like the stars in the canopy of the sky. You are being held. those moments of pause between the breaths, being in the cradle of the divine, held, loved, nourished. And with a prayer, Divine Mother, teach me to withdraw my consciousness from the world of Maya illusion. Help me to find thy lightness of being within my spine and brain, that all the little nerve channels of my body may reverse their flow back into the spine and upwards into the brain and higher state of consciousness. And in that state of superconsciousness, that I may know thee as holding my being in the palm of your hand. And visualizing the little myriad of nerve pathways throughout the body, even to the tips of the fingers, usually have an outward flow to the edges of the skin, and choosing instead to have the flow flowing backward with the ease of current, as if stepping into the flow of a great river. That the flow of the current of the nerves is flowing backwards into the spine, into that wondrous channel of light in the spine, into a stream of consciousness that flows upward. Flowing upward through the spine. Imagine that you were a tiny bubble, gently percolating upward through that effervescent flow of light in the spine, flowing up behind the heart, up through the throat, and into the centre of the head, where there's a deep stillness. And allowing the eyes to become focused towards the brow, behind your closed eyes, or a few centimetres in front of the brow, which is easier to maintain. And aim to have your two eyes focusing on one single point. That there is a sense of quiet, of power, when the two eyes, the current of the two eyes meets at the one point. And then visualizing that the hand of the Divine Mother is above your head, bestowing many blessings. A deep emanation of peace, joy, and nurture. The blessings of the Divine Mother being absorbed within the very skin, within the brain, and allowing your heart to open to receive these blessings. Imagining that your petals of the heart were rotating in the spine to face upward, so that your 12 unfurling beautiful petals of the heart are absorbing the divine blessings of the Divine Mother. That she tells you that you are not limited, that you are one with the stars, with the glittering cosmos, and the whole of eternity. And that it is love that opens the doorway of the heart. And visualizing that your expanded sphere of consciousness is floating as a bubble in eternity. Expansive in all directions, above, beneath, left and right, in front and behind, within and without. That you are held, that you are buoyant, resilient to any of the knocks of earthly life. Where your true state of consciousness is not of this world, not of the earthly world. That you are unlimited, that you merely have to think, and it is so. So choosing this moment to affirm a positive statement of your true reality. I am and sending that positive mental statement in all directions across eternity. Spread your consciousness in all directions. And then visualizing that you are a tiny babe in the hand of the Divine Mother, receiving her love, her attention, and then pouring that expanded awareness of being a babe of the Divine Mother, pouring that consciousness back into the physical frame. So that you can feel that an expanded state of consciousness allows the physical body to be lighter. And affirming your positive mental statement, I am. And filling that positive statement into the shell of the body. So allow that positive statement to flow down the nerve pathways into the hands. Flow down the nerve pathways into the feet. Imagine that you're ingesting that positive statement so that it sits within the belly, like a most satisfying meal. And being aware of the body breathing and how the breath softly comes into the body and how the breath softly leaves. And starting to breathe a little bit more deeply. Moving fingers, moving toes, bringing the hands together. And imagine as you're rubbing your hands together that you're charging up the hands with your positive mental statement. So you can be saying, I am. And then cupping the hands over the eyes. And allow that positive statement to flow in through the eyes, nourishing the brain behind. I am. And then just gently opening the eyes and coming back into the room.
With warmest delight, this podcast was brought to you by Jenny Light. Find out more about Jenny's courses, retreats, workshops and publications at living-lightly.co.uk. Blessings on your spiritual path.